This week, First Coast News is remembering D-Day 75 years later. And you know the First Coast has a long history of military service and sacrifice.
The Normandy invasion is a pivotal moment of our country's history.
And the First Coast's contribution to the cause may be a lesson that some of us have forgotten. Maybe you never learned it.
And that's why all this week, Lou Turner and Jeannie Blaylock are reporting in Normandy with photojournalist Jeff Renfro. Our goal is to remember, teach, and inspire.
So we want to break down D-Day by the numbers for you tonight. The invasion happened on 5 beaches stretching over 50 miles of the French coastline. Those involved included 156,000 American, British, and Canadian troops. There were 13,000 paratroopers that rained down from above, 6,000 ships that stormed the shores, and the military was ready, bringing 7 million pounds of supplies and 448,000 pounds of ammunition. Now, it all happened during this week 75 years ago, back in 1944, on the beaches of Normandy in France. And that's where we find our Jeannie Blaylock and Louis Turner joining us now live.
And we start with a very famous quote. Thank God for the U.S. Navy. Now, you might think that was said by a naval officer, but it wasn't.
Right.
You might think it was said by somebody connected to the Navy. Not so. It was said by a very important person right over there on Omaha Beach on D-Day, and we're going to explain that in just a moment.
It's an amazing monument that we're by right now. You thank God for the U.S. Navy. Thank God for this monument as well, because you were telling me, and it was something that I had learned, that along all these beaches and all the monuments you even mentioned a half hour ago, there was nothing for the United States Navy for such a long time, and now we've got this right here for some incredible work they did.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. I mean, it is beautiful, but it's not just another great-looking sculpture. It's because Jacksonville is proud of our Navy community, and it's because of a Jacksonville veteran, a Navy veteran, who made this happen in Normandy. Famous words on D-Day from the senior Army officer ashore at Omaha Beach. Just hours into the battle, our soldiers were in trouble.
The first wave on Omaha Beach was floundering.
The second wave pinned down, but then
U.S. Navy destroyers started moving in toward the beach, pounding German gun positions from point-blank range.
And then that day, by sunset,
the Germans' wall was broken forever.
D-Day could not have happened without the Navy.
But for 6 decades after D-Day, more than 100 plaques and monuments went up on the beaches of Normandy, and not a single one
I just think it was a tremendous oversight.
to the U.S. Navy. So this veteran in Jacksonville pushed with gusto.
I'm Captain Gregory Streeter, U.S. Navy retired.
Captain Streeter inspired a campaign to raise money, $500,000 to create a Navy D-Day monument, unveiled in Normandy in 2008. And now Captain Streeter tells me he hopes it reminds people that we lost sailors on D-Day too.
By our count, we believe 1,026 sailors, I think, died on D-Day.
Their average age, just 19 years old. Some, the buddies of Ernie Corvese. Their job, to blow up the German booby traps on the beach, the mines on top of these poles.
I found out later that they were all killed. I was the only one left.
True sacrifice, now honored in Normandy, France, because of great effort from our Navy veterans in Jacksonville, Florida.
Ernie.
The emotion now, 75 years later. And you know, Ernie's job to blow up, to detonate the mines on these obstacles out here, up on these poles, they call them asparagus, jammed into the sand.
Yeah.
Went awry and he lost all of his friends. But now if he had that job, he'd be called a Navy SEAL. They just didn't use that term back then.
Precursors to the SEALs, the Seabees and the Frogmen who went in. In fact, coming up just after this break, we're going to meet a Navy commander who's working on yet another Memorial, another monument here in Normandy dedicated to those guys who went in, and what they did, they were doing something called softening the targets, because you couldn't just send the army in. They had to soften the because, like you said, Rommel really booby-trapped it. So we'll talk about that coming up from Normandy right after the break. Stay there.